Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome to part 1 of What If Deku joined the League of Villains. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Musatafu City was quiet. It had all been but deserted, save for one walking through the streets. The boy dressed in black, his face obscured by a black metallic mask. The boy walked slowly through the streets. He was in no rush to arrive on time. Then again, no one in his position would be. It was a matter of life and death, in every sense of the phrase. As he walked, he couldn't help but admire the Hero Commission's work. True to her word, the president had ensured this area would be evacuated, so there would be no unnecessary casualties. He didn't know how she did it, nor did he particularly care. The fewer distractions, the better. He had arrived at his destination. Making his way up the stairs, the boy felt a strong wave of nostalgia wash over him. It had been over a year since he was here last, and in that time so much had changed. Or rather, he had changed. His experiences had molded him into something else entirely. He was stronger than he used to be and more knowledgeable. Growing up, he tended to see the world in black and white like many children did. However, now that he was grown up, he realized it was far more gray. Not all heroes were perfect saviors, nor were all villains complete monsters. As much people tried to portray it as that simple, it was not, nor had it ever been. Oh no, the concepts of good and evil were much deeper than that. Upon reaching the rooftop, the place for his final battle, he stared out into the vast city, now a quiet shadow of what it once was. While it had been a year, it felt like an eternity since that fateful day, and in essence, it was. He had experienced much more in that year than he had in his entire life. Looking out into the city once more, he reflected on that day and everything after and wondered. Would I do anything differently? April, 1 year ago. Can someone without a quirk become a hero? Asked Izuku Midoriya. Currently, he was speaking to All Might, his idol and the #1 hero in Japan, on the rooftop of a building after being rescued from dying at the hands of a deadly sludge villain. Izuku was asking this question because unlike most of the world population, 80% to be precise, he had been born quirkless. Although it was quite rare today, it did happen. Quirkless people were often subjected to prejudice and bullying from society, as they were deemed weak, worthless and easy targets for villains, because they could not fight back. In relation to being a hero, there had never been a quirkless one before, so Izuku was wondering if it was possible. I don't think it's possible, kid, replied All Might in a flat tone. Izuku's blood froze. Pros put their lives on the line each day. So, I can't honestly say that being a hero without a quirk is possible. Izuku felt a sudden pain in his chest upon hearing this. I see, he said while trying not to show the pain he was going through. If you care about saving people, then become a cop. Sure, it's a job that's ridiculed for being on the receiving end for captured villains, but no less admirable. All Might said before turning to leave. It's not wrong to dream. Just make sure it's achievable. He finished before leaving down the stairs. When he was gone, Izuku stood still for a minute before he finally collapsed and started crying hysterically. No one believed in him. No one ever believed he could become a hero, not even his own mother. His classmates, especially Koch-chan, Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend turned primary bully, mocked his dream and bullied him relentlessly because of both it and being quirkless. To add insult to injury, he was even given the nickname Deku, an alternate spelling of his name meaning worthless. Memories of all the torment he had endured suddenly came flooding back. You quirkless piece of shit. As if someone like you could ever become a hero, you completely useless Deku. Why does he even try? A quirkless person can never hope to do anything meaningful in this world. One particular memory came back to him, one from earlier that day. Koch-chan had just destroyed his notebook on quirk analysis, where he described the quirks of other heroes. As he was leaving, with a smug smile, he told Izuku, you know there's one way for you to get a quirk. Just take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be reborn with useful one. Coming back to reality, Izuku felt truly broken. He no longer wanted to be a part of this world. He didn't want to exist at all. He just wanted his pain to end. It was then he realized that no one would actually care if he died, well, except his mother who loved him unconditionally. It was there and then he decided, for the first time in his life, to take Koch-chan's advice. I'll wait until tonight, Izuku thought. Before I do this, I'd like to say goodbye to her. Izuku took out his burnt notebook, the same one Koch-chan destroyed, and threw it off the roof. He wouldn't be needing it anymore. Izuku took a quick route home to avoid Koch-chan and his friends. He heard some sort of commotion going on in the city, but paid no attention to it as it wasn't his problem. He arrived home where he was greeted by his mother and co. They sat down and had dinner where they had their conversations about school and how the day had been. Inko noticed that Izuku had some new bruises and burns, but didn't say anything. She knew exactly who was responsible. She was going to call her friend Mitsuki, Bakugo's mother, and the school later and finally sort this out. This has gone on long enough, she thought furiously. Mom, I'm going out for a walk, Izuku announced suddenly. I've got my keys so you can go to bed. Inko was surprised since it was 10:30, but didn't say anything, as it would have been a good opportunity to make those phone calls. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted, however, by Izuku hugging her tightly. Thanks, Mom, for everything. I really love you for it, Izuku told her. Inko was taken slightly back by this, but simply smiled and replied, I love you too, sweetie. It was then that Izuku left, trying not to let her see his face. While she found his behavior suspicious, she said nothing and reached for the phone. Izuku arrived at the building where he had spoken to All Might. Because it was a vacant building, he didn't have any trouble getting in. As he stood on the edge of the roof, he saw his life flash before him. It was mainly of him being bullied by everyone, especially Koch-chan. No one had ever once defended him, not even the teachers who just watched him get trampled on like it was nothing. Some even laughed at it. He had been tortured and torn apart, and for what? Wanting to save people. And now Koch-chan was moving on to be a hero at UA, the top school for producing heroes, where he would probably get everything he wanted, everything Izuku wanted. How was that fair? Well, it didn't matter anymore, nothing did. And Izuku, he just didn't care. I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't take it anymore. Thanks for everything. I love you, he whispered with tears streaming down his face. It was then that he jumped. However, instead of hitting the ground, Izuku fell into a dark mist and lost consciousness. Izuku slowly opened his eyes. He was lying on a couch, but made no attempt to move or examine his surroundings. I see you're awake, good, came a voice to Izuku's left. He sat up and turned to see who was talking. While doing so, he saw that he was in some sort of bar. There were two people there. One was behind the counter wearing a classic bartender suit, and whose head and hands looked like a black mist. The other was a man with messy gray hair, dark trousers and top hand, disturbingly, a disembodied hand covering his face leaning against the counter. Is this heaven or hell? Izuku asked tiredly. I honestly couldn't care less at this point. The other displayed no reaction whatsoever. They just stood there staring at him. You're not dead if that's what you think. My associate here saved you before that happened, replied the man with the hand on his face. It took Izuku a minute to fully register what he said, and when he did, he snorted. You're right. Why would anyone bother saving me? Asked Izuku in a depressed voice. Maybe he shouldn't be speaking that way to his saviors, but at that moment, he legitimately didn't care. He had wanted to die, but he couldn't even do that properly. He truly was a Deku. I asked Kurogiri to bring you here, said a deep voice. Izuku turned slightly to see a TV with a man broadcasting himself on it. From what Izuku could see, he had no face, no eyes, ears or even nose, just a mouth. Hello Izuku, the man greeted politely. My name is All for One. This is the League of Villains. Izuku was confused. The League of Villains? He asked. Izuku was fully aware these were criminals, dangerous people he should be afraid of. For some reason, however, he got the feeling they weren't going to hurt him. Why save him otherwise? Curious, he started to speak. Wait, you were looking for me. What would you want with someone like me? He asked, still confused. All for One held up a burnt notebook and said, Tomura here found this while he was out and brought it to me. I must admit, my colleagues and I were impressed by these notes of yours. You've got quite a talent. Izuku was caught off guard by this statement. Someone was actually praising him for his work. For him, that was abnormal. No one ever praised him for anything. It's also because of this that we would like you to work for us, All for One continued. Personally, I would like to make use of your abilities to further the status of our organization. With what you are capable of, Ibel. Hold on a minute, Izuku interrupted. Do you even believe what you're saying? Regardless of what he had heard, Izuku felt it was too good to be true. The mere idea of someone needing him or even thinking he was an individual worth having seemed absurd. The two at the bar were a little taken back by this. All for One didn't react. What would you want with a quirkless reject like me? Izuku asked. There are plenty of people out there with powerful quirks you could ask. So why me? Regardless of what anyone said, quirkless people were, are, and always would be looked down on by those with quirks, even those with a weak quirk. Someone who saw them as equals and disregarded society's view did not exist. Not as far as Izuku knew. All for One must have been able to tell what Izuku was thinking. Growing up without a quirk, I'm guessing you've lived a harsh life? He inquired. Izuku answered with silence, which was more than enough for him. Suicide rates for quirkless people are exceptionally high, All for One continued. Although, they don't occur without reason. It takes a lot for them to reach that point. Young man, if you are willing, would you mind telling us how you reached that point? Izuku contemplated this for a moment. These were complete strangers who he had no reason to trust, let alone tell them about his past. However, hearing his words, Izuku felt all of his emotions and frustrations built up over the years reach the surface. All his pain, all his suffering, he couldn't hold them in any longer. Well, Izuku started. And he told them. How he had been bullied for years. How he desired to become a hero and why. His encounter with All Might. What Koch-chan said to do. Basically, how his entire world just shattered. All for One seemed rather annoyed when All Might was mentioned but remained silent. When Izuku finished speaking, All for One spoke again. Midoriya, I understand what you're going through, I really do. However, I meant what I said about you. The fact that you are quirkless is irrelevant. What I was impressed with was your intelligence and observational skills, not a quirk. Which is why I will ask again. Will you join us? If you do, we will give the chance to be something this full society never gave you, he promised. Just then, Izuku felt something in his heart he hadn't truly felt in a while. Hope. He felt hope. He felt a desire to live again. Alright, I accept, he said simply. But I have a few conditions. And what would those be? All for One asked. 1. I will have free reign over what I do. 2. I would like to be provided with living space as I have no desire to return home, he said, thinking of his mother. And finally, regardless of what happens in the league or whatever situation we are in, I will not have to kill anyone. That is one line I will not cross. The one covered in hands growled in annoyance. Already this brat was starting to get ahead of himself. There is no problem with any of those terms, All for One replied with a positive tone. Kurogiri, give him one of the vacant apartments close to here. Don't worry about rent since I own the building, All for One said. Well, the Miss Villain, whom Izuku realized was Kurogiri, nodded in agreement. Tomoura Shigaraki, please stay behind. I have something I need to discuss with you. Tomoura nodded in understanding but still had something he needed to say. Not to kill the mood, but he intervened. Since you're a villain now, you'll need a code name. Izuku thought about it for a moment, and one came to mind, one he had held like a scar on his back his whole life. It would serve as both his identity and a reminder of why he was choosing this life. Call me Deku, he said in a serious voice. Meanwhile, at an unknown location. Are you sure about this? All for One asked a woman with green hair, eyes, and dressed in green clothes from neck to foot. I personally see nothing wrong with letting a quirkless child like him join us, but Atrocity is quite against this. He may actually step in and kill the boy himself. All for One, however, was not the least bit intimidated by this. Worry not, Viper, I will deal with him if the need arises. You forget, my dear, he isn't nearly as powerful as me, he replied calmly. I suppose, she murmured. Well, anyway, good night. And just like that, her image disappeared from the screen. Viper, the League's chief scientist, her quirk was her name, which basically allowed her to do anything a snake could, and granted her immunity from all poisons. Atrocity was one of the League's other leaders. He was cruel, sadistic, merciless, and evil right down to the bone. His quirk was Power Stockpile, similar to All Might's quirk One for All, however, not as powerful. His view on quirkless people was much stronger than society's. He only saw them as sacrificial lambs for experimentation, and others practicing their quirks on. Let's see how far you will go, Izuku Midoriya, All for One soliloquized. Can you survive our world? Izuku wearily opened his eyes. He glanced over at the clock and realized that it was past 10 a.m. Normally he would have woken up earlier, but frankly, it had been the best sleep he had experienced in ages. For once, he wasn't going to have to go through the usual routine of being pushed around at school. He was safe from all of that. For once, he truly felt relaxed. Well, maybe not entirely. Mom has probably noticed I'm missing by now, Izuku thought. It was very rare that Izuku missed breakfast with his mother. She might have thought he left early for school, which was natural. However, she would definitely know by the end of the day when he didn't return home, if the school didn't notify her first. Izuku may have been a bit hasty about his decision to join the League, however, he did not join just because of One for All's kind words. There were a number of reasons. His mother being one. Izuku wasn't proud of leaving her, quite the opposite in fact. He loved his mother deeply because she had always been there for him when he was suffering. However, he knew that if he had stayed with her, she would have been in great danger. He was never great at lying to her, so it was highly possible she would have become suspicious of his actions sooner or later. When that did happen, well, Izuku had a good idea of what would be done to silence her. Furthermore, he couldn't stand lying to her, so this would hurt her less if she ever found out about his predicament. To summarize it, Inko would be safer if he wasn't around. One for All was another reason. Despite his generous words, Izuku was not stupid. He was not normally the type to judge by appearances, however, he got the strange sense that One for All was not the type to take no for an answer. He must have had some other plan to ensure Izuku joined if he refused. So Izuku was just being cautious. The conditions Izuku had demanded also bettered his position. Because of them, he had full control over his actions. Furthermore, the final condition he had set meant that he would never have to cross that line, ever. An image of Koch-chan briefly flashed through his mind. No, not even him, Izuku thought. Despite everything Koch-chan had put him through, Izuku did not want him dead. Though that wasn't to say he didn't hate him, because he truly did. It was the first time he had realized it. At the bar. Since the fridge in his apartment was empty, Izuku went to the bar to see about breakfast. Upon entering, he was suddenly flipped forward and landed on his back. Izuku moaned in pain. He was then hauled up by someone and placed in a chokehold position. If you even try to move, I'll snap your neck, said a soft cold voice. It belonged to a female. Alright you little shit, why don't you tell me how you got in here and who you work for? If you answer honestly, I'll make your death quick and painless. Don't, and it'll be the opposite, she snarled while tightening her grip. Izuku tried to speak, but he couldn't, he was still struggling to breathe. It was at that moment when Kurogiri entered the bar and witnessed what was happening. Razor, let that boy go. He is a new recruit, one chosen by Sensei himself, Kurogiri informed the woman. After a few seconds of reluctance, Razor finally released Izuku. Gasping for air, Izuku lay silently on the ground. Slowly, he got back on his feet and turned to face his assailant. From what he could see, Razor was a young woman, probably in her 20s, with short silver hair and eyes. Her entire outfit consisted of dark leather clothes and black high heels. As he examined her, Razor glared at him with murderous intent. Why wasn't I told about this, Kurogiri? She questioned while still glaring at Izuku. He only became a member last night, the other villain replied. And besides, you've been away for the past couple of days without any way for us to contact you. Razor said nothing more and simply sat down. Shortly after the commotion, Kurogiri sorted out breakfast for Izuku and informed him that his fridge would be filled later, something which Izuku was grateful for. When he had finished eating, Kurogiri ordered Izuku to follow him. Izuku had been more than happy to get away from Razor who scared him. Kurogiri led Izuku to a dark room with various monitors. It was then that One for All appeared on one of them. Good morning, Izuku. I hope there were no issues with your apartment, as it was the best we could do on such short notice, he greeted. There were no issues at all, Izuku replied. Thank you for your concern, however, I'm guessing you didn't call me here for that. Right you are, Izuku. I called you here because we'd like to discuss what you will be doing for the League, One for All told him. Izuku shifted slightly in response. Tasks. When One for All said this, Izuku realized that he must be doing more than quirk analysis. What did you think you'd just be writing down notes for Sensei, you little twerp, snickered Tomura. Izuku jumped when he heard his voice. Tomura was leaning against the wall next to him. Izuku hadn't even noticed him. Tomura, enough, said Kurogiri sternly. He only arrived last night, and Sensei didn't exactly explain things properly to Deku last night. Sensei, do they mean All for One? Izuku wondered. Tomura glared at Kurogiri. Enough, both of you. I'd like to speak alone, so would you both leave? One for All requested commandingly. Tomura looked surprised at this. Kurogiri, however, simply bowed and then proceeded to drag Tomura out of the room. Seeing Tomura in the hall, Razor proceeded to leave as she hated the man. At the bar. Why is Sensei so interested in that quirkless brat? What could he possibly do that's useful for us? Tomura raged. Kurogiri stared at him. He understood Tomura had been against this from the beginning. Tomura had only been polite last night because Sensei ordered him to be. He also told them to remain silent during the ordeal, as he believed it would be easier for him to convince Deku to join. Why did he even try convincing him to join when he could have easily forced him? He has quirk or two for that sort of job, Tomura continued. Now, Tomura Shigaraki. By offering him the choice to join us, it will further his trust and loyalty, Kurogiri softly explained. And if his mind is left undisturbed, he will work much more efficiently. This did nothing to convince Tomura, who continued to glare at the counter. It doesn't matter. Deku's quirklessness makes him a handicap, he said angrily. Like it does anyone else. Upon hearing this, Kurogiri felt something snap inside him. The image of a red-haired girl appeared in his mind. Listen here, Shigaraki. Kurogiri yelled. Deku was not welcomed into the League because he was quirkless. Sensei was impressed by his intelligence and thought he could be of use to us. Quirks are not everything in this world. Just because someone does not possess one does not mean that they are a handicap. They are capable of many things. So, listen here, you spoiled brat, don't you dare look down on someone for being quirkless, cause last time I checked your quirk isn't overly useful either. Do I make myself clear? Tomura was shocked at his outburst. He couldn't ever remember Kurogiri yelling or even being angry. I'm going to get some more drinks, declared Kurogiri and left the bar. Kurogiri then headed to the storeroom. As he reached for a crate of drinks, the soft voice of the girl he had thought about before entered his mind. Hey Kuro, she said sweetly, who's your new friend? Kurogiri froze. After a minute, however, he replied. His name is Deku, he told her sadly. And he's a lot like you, Laura. He turned to face the girl, but no one was there, no one ever was. Kurogiri felt tears coming but held them back. I miss you, Laura, he whispered. I miss you so much. Back at the communications room. After Kurogiri and Tomura left, One for All started speaking with Izuku. What I would like you to do for the League is to take notes on quirks for both heroes and villains. From what I saw from your notebook, you analyzed and noted both the strengths and weaknesses. You even came up with several ways to improve them, he informed Izuku. I would like you to do the same with our group, particularly ideas on how to improve our quirks. In relation to other heroes, I want you to investigate their weaknesses and assist in coming up with ways to defeat them easier. Izuku pondered over this for a moment. He would basically be trying to take down the very people who protected society. Innocent people would most likely be hurt by this decision. He thought of his mother as one of those people and shuddered. No, Izuku thought. There's no point dwelling on this. I already said yes to joining, meaning there's no going back now. One for All interrupted Izuku's thoughts. There's something else I would like you to do. Tomura wasn't joking about that. He held up a document to Izuku. Izuku jumped to his feet in surprise. It was his school file. How did you get that? Izuku asked, surprised. An associate of mine procured it. Your school doesn't exactly have the best security, he chuckled. She said it was almost too easy. Izuku stared at him blankly. That aside, from what I read, your grades for most subjects are average. Where the hell is he going with this? Izuku thought. One for All had already asked him to be a part of the league because of his observational skills. He couldn't understand why he would look into his school life. Most of your grades were average. However, you received top marks in your science subjects, biology and chemistry, he continued. It's because of this that I would like you to work with someone from our science branch. It is with this person that I would like you to develop certain drugs that can enhance others' abilities. Izuku finally understood. However, something was bothering him. If you don't mind me asking, Izuku said nervously. Why are you being so open about everything with me? I literally just joined, and it seems strange you would trust me with this kind of information. Last night, you were even very clear about your intentions. Well, how else am I supposed to earn your trust? He asked simply. It's better for you to find out now than later. Izuku wanted to believe him, however, part of him doubted that One for All was telling the whole truth. Unfortunately, Izuku did not have enough information to act, so he would just play along for now. Okay, I'll do it, Izuku said with a serious expression. When do I start? One for All simply smiled in response. At an unknown location. Should you really have told him all of that? Viper asked One for All with a worried tone. I only gave him the necessary information, One for All responded calmly. Viper sighed and looked at him again. You haven't told him about any of our plans, have you? Especially not about those things. No dear, I'm not that stupid, he replied simply. Though he was impressed with Izuku, One for All was not about to just go and trust him with all the league's secrets. He didn't completely trust the boy yet. Does he know who he's working with? Asked Viper. No. I just told him that he would be collaborating with one of our scientists via voice chat on his computer. He would even see your face, he responded. He doesn't even know what I truly want to use his science skills for. At the mention of this, Viper was relieved. Viper was about to leave when she remembered that she had one more question. If you don't mind me asking, she said hesitantly. Go on, One for All urged her. Why did you reveal yourself to him so quickly? She asked. Even by your standards, that isn't normal. You always hide in the shadows, and it's incredibly rare for you to interact with other members of the league. One for All considered this for a moment. The reason I revealed myself was because Midoriya caught my interest. Much like Tomura and Kurogiri, something, as you know, is very rare, he explained. Viper didn't say any more. She was satisfied with what she had heard and decided to leave. After Viper was gone, One for All thought a bit more about Izuku. He hadn't told him everything, but he had told him enough. What Izuku didn't know wouldn't hurt him, at least not yet. He had plans for the boy, but given his troubled past, it was best to let things play out slowly. While dwelling on it, One for All started laughing. All Might, I promise we will meet again, and when we do, you will suffer for what you took from me, he vowed. So, what do you think? Asked Izuku. If this works, the enhancement drug should be stabler and the duration used extended. Let us hope that you are correct, replied S1. Considering how the last test went. Izuku grimaced slightly at the reminder. He had seen the state of the unlucky individual who had sampled the drug. The enhancement drug Izuku created had not been completely successful so far. The drug itself, when injected into a quirked individual, gave the user a boost in quirk efficiency and power, as well as an increase in that user's physical attributes, such as speed, strength, endurance, and stamina. However, it also provided a boost in aggression and a big decrease in intelligence. Furthermore, it only lasted for a few minutes. And when it wore off, the user was left in a weakened state and unable to use their quirk for at least 6 hours. It was a little similar to the drug Trigger, however with a few major differences. The power-ups were stronger. The side effects were more devastating. It did not last as long. Unlike Trigger, this drug did not force the user's quirk to activate. If injected, the user, willing or not, would feel a surge of power course through their body, but it would not force their quirk to activate. Izuku had made several attempts to improve it, but with little success. So far, all he had managed to do was increase the allotted time for usage to 12 minutes, as well as reduce the effects on the mind, well the intelligence part, slightly. Izuku was hoping for a bigger improvement this time, but kept his fingers crossed. Deku, S1 called. You need not worry. These things take time, and for most scientists, it takes years to properly create and perfect compounds like this. So, take your time. Izuku looked up at the screen. You shouldn't give me this much credit, Izuku told them. My idea came from your formulas and theories. All I did was derive inspiration from them. Regardless of that, you have made progress, and for that we are grateful. I will message you the results later. Goodbye. S1 finished, and the screen blinked out. Izuku sighed. It had been 3 months since he joined the league. In that time, he had carried out his duties with quirk analysis rather well. Some days he would go out to different cities, with help from Kurogiri, and observe either fight between heroes and villains or heroes saving people from accidents and record their quirks. Other days he worked in his lab, a small space provided by the league not too far from his apartment, working on mixtures and formulas he developed. He had mostly adapted to his new life rather well. With members such as Kurogiri and Tomoe, he was on reasonably good terms. Sensei and S1, whom he only knew through voice chat, he worked well with. Razor on the other hand, well, she hated him. Why? Even he didn't know. Speaking of which, it was time for training with her. Sensei had not planned on using Izuku in the field of battle, however, the decision to learn self-defense had been brought on after a few incidents, most of which occurred when Izuku was out doing his job. The first was when he was studying a fight between Endeavor, the number 2 hero, and a shape-shifting villain. He almost got caught in the man's fire when the villain dodged. The second was when another villain took him hostage. Fortunately, the media was not present, and no one there recognized him, so he was able to slip away unnoticed when freed. Other incidents involved being attacked by thugs, leading to Kurogiri coming to save him. In the end, Sensei ordered that he be taught self-defense, specifically by Razor, considering it was her specialty. In a training room next to the bar, Razor spin kicked Izuku hard in the face, and he fell to the mat in agony. Seriously, is this the best you can do, you shitty brat? Razor complained. Because if it is, then you may as well just quit while you still have a chance. This isn't a place for little boys like you. Hell, even that bastard Tomoe can put up more of a fight. Izuku glared at her. I swear she's just like Koch-chan, he thought. Noticing this, Razor kicked him again. Izuku let out a groan as his face hit the mat. Well, you sure are a glutton for pain, she stated. Unfortunately, I'm feeling tired at the moment, so take a break, you little shit. Razor then left. Izuku just lay on the floor. He had been trying to work with Razor for 2 weeks now, but every time they met, she swore at him, insulted him, and attacked him. It seemed like she really did hate him, but Izuku couldn't fathom why. He couldn't remember doing anything that offended her. At the bar, unbeknownst to Izuku, Kurogiri was attempting to find out himself. So, why do you hate Deku so much exactly? Kurogiri asked. For a minute she said nothing. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, I don't hate him exactly. It's just, well, it's complicated. Kurogiri frowned. This isn't like you, he told her. And it wasn't. Razor had always hated other members for various reasons. There was hardly a person she didn't hate. Kurogiri and Sensei being exceptions. Perhaps One for All was not an exception. More of someone she did not interact with enough. Would it be because he is quirkless? Kurogiri asked. It was the most likely reason. Razor looked straight into his eyes. No, I could care less about that. I've never been biased about that sort of thing, Razor admitted. In my view, whether someone has a quirk or not is irrelevant. On the battlefield, we are all equal. Kurogiri was confused. Then what is it? He asked. I've seen how you treat him. You're harder on him than any other member I've seen you with. Razor sighed. Not seeing a reason to keep it from him, she explained why she treated Deku the way she did. Kurogiri remained silent during the entire confession. Whatever he had expected, it wasn't this. It was very rare for Razor to show concern for anyone. Then you should tell him this yourself, Kurogiri explained. Razor gave him a look. If you ever hope to work with him properly, then you should both have an understanding of each other, he explained. Razor growled in annoyance. She knew he was right, and she hated it. She got up and headed back to the room. I'd better do this before I change my mind, she thought. However, she stopped before exiting. She turned to face Kurogiri with a solemn expression. Mind if I ask you something, Kurogiri? She asked. Curious, he nodded in response. The reason you've been so good to Deku, would it be because of lore? She asked. Kurogiri didn't react, he just stared at her. The silence was enough of an answer for Razor. She then turned to leave. One of the things about her and Kurogiri's relationship, they both knew heavily personal things about each other, and they neither judged each other by them, nor went around telling other members. At the training room, Razor walked in to see Izuku still lying on the floor. Body really is pathetic, she deadpanned. Hearing someone entering, Izuku sat up to see Razor leaning against the wall staring at him. He groaned in annoyance. He hadn't recovered from her last assault. Listen up, you little shit, Razor growled. We need to talk. Razor moved to sit down in front of Izuku. I was told that, she started but then stopped. Expressing her feelings in a non-violent manner was not something she excelled at. Taking a moment, she collected her thoughts. Just be honest with him, tell him what you think, she thought. Regardless of how insensitive it might sound. Staring into Izuku's eyes, she took a deep breath. I want to tell you, to explain to you, she quickly corrected, why I treat you the way I do. Izuku was quite surprised. Razor wasn't acting like herself. The reason I do is that I heard about your past from Kurogiri, she said. Honestly, I thought it was pathetic, and I mean you. Now Izuku was just confused. Don't get me wrong, I understand that you had it very rough, but at the same time, it's your own fault since you let it happen, Razor explained. This made Izuku even more confused. What do you, he started but was cut off by Razor. Deku, during the time you were bullied, did ever once stand up for yourself or even try to fight back? She asked him. Izuku considered this for a moment and said, not really, no. Fight back? She couldn't have been serious. What was he supposed to do against a guy who could blow him up at any time, not to mention the other students who would gang up on him? Then how about this? Did you ever report what was going on or even go to someone for help? She asked. Like your mother. Izuku looked at the floor and said nothing. Razor put her hand to her head and sighed. So basically, if I'm understanding this right, you allowed yourself to suffer, to be kicked around like a punching bag so much that when your idol said you couldn't be a hero, you tried to throw yourself off the roof, she stated. Izuku still said nothing. Having said her piece, Razor got up and headed toward the door. Wait, Izuku said. Go home for today and think about what I've told you, Razor ordered. She then turned and faced him with a sincere look. Izuku, I will train you, but I want something in return, she said. The next time you face the one who hurt you, the one who drove you to suicide, stand your ground. Fight. Let him know that you won't allow him to hurt you anymore. You have to. People like him break people like you on a daily basis. And he will continue to break you unless you take a stand and fight back. Izuku could do nothing but stare at her. Razor turned to exit and said, not taking any action is basically the same as inviting him to hurt you, because he knows you won't fight back. She then left. At Izuku's apartment, Izuku collapsed onto his bed. He lay there for over an hour thinking about what Razor said. As he took it all into consideration, he realized that she was right. Over the years, whenever Koch-chan or someone else had bullied him, he never fought back, he always let them beat him down. It was also true that he had never told someone about what he was going through, not even his mother. He always told her he had fallen over, though her facial expression made it clear she wasn't fully convinced. "God, I'm an idiot," he said to himself, and he meant it. When his life was going to hell, what did he do? Nothing. He allowed himself to be pushed around every day because he thought, and at the time believed, that there was no way for him to fight back. Well, not anymore. Razor was right, he needed to change. He couldn't afford to be weak, not anymore. That person he used to be needed to die. If he was going to survive being in the league, he needed to be stronger. He had to be stronger. As he thought about all of this, he got up from bed and took out some scissors. He headed to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. This will be my starting point, he declared. At the training room the next day, Razor walked in and saw Izuku waiting for her. He was all geared up for training, his hair had been cut short as well. But that wasn't what caught Razor's attention. What caught her attention was the look in his eyes, one she knew all too well. It was the look of a warrior, a look of determination. Izuku approached her and bowed. "I'm ready," he said. "And willing." Razor gave a look of admiration. "Good," she replied. "Let's get started, you shitty brat." Izuku Midoriya. As per the orders of her boss, and many urgings of her friend Mitsuki Bakugo, Inko was having a day off to rest. The reason? Because she had been out late so many nights searching for her missing son, and they were beginning to take a toll on her health, both physically and mentally. She had been at it since his disappearance 10 months ago. "Izuku baby, please come home. I miss you," she sobbed. Inko spent most of her days crying. Each night she looked for him by going around the city and asking random people if they had seen him, to which she always received a no. Additionally, she made regular visits to the police station at least once a week to see if they had made any progress, but the answer was always the same. Another action she took was placing posters around the city with Mitsuki's help. The result ended was the same. Izuku was still missing. "It's all my fault," she whispered. "I should have done something sooner." Her son was in pain, and she did nothing. Every day he would come with bruises and burn marks, likely from Katsuki, which he tried to hide. Inko, however, had a sharp eye, and could see them from the edges of his sleeves. Other times she could tell from the way he walked that he was limping. Izuku usually gave the excuse, "I fell over," but Inko knew he was lying. The only reason she didn't press the issue before was that she knew it would upset him, and because she knew he would deny it. She tried talking with Mitsuki about it, who in turn was furious with Katsuki, but nothing she did seemed to get through to him. The last time she was with Izuku was the last straw. She decided to visit the school the next day to inform the principal of her son's situation. She made another phone call to Mitsuki about Katsuki. "I can come in with you tomorrow if you'd like," she told her. "Honestly, we should have done this sooner. His behavior, well, it's gone on long enough." It seemed Mitsuki had finally reached her limit with Katsuki. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. The next day when she got up, she noticed Izuku wasn't in bed or at home, so she assumed he'd gone to school early. It was when she arrived at the school with Mitsuki that the trouble started. According to the principal and the teacher, Izuku did not turn up that day. It was then Inko got worried. As she wondered where he could be, she recalled her last conversation with him. "Thanks, Mom, for everything really. I really love you for it," he had told her while hugging her. "No," she murmured horrified. "He wouldn't." She called the police afterwards, and they started investigating his disappearance, but found nothing. Shortly afterwards, Inko began her current routine of searching. "Please don't let it have been that," she begged. "Anything but that." Inko had an idea of what Izuku meant when he said those words to her, but she didn't want to believe it. Whatever her son had been going through, he had clearly reached his limit. "Your body hasn't been found, so I know you are still out there," Inko said to herself. Regardless of the situation or the progress, she was not going to give up. "Izuku, despite what you've done, I still love you. No matter what happens, I will find you. I will bring you home," she swore. Ichako Araka. Well, this is it, Ichako thought. She stared at the large building in front of her. UA High School, the best hero school in Japan, if not the world, where anyone could become a hero. Though it did offer other opportunities in other departments known as general education, support, and business. Ichako was aiming for the hero course. "Mom, Dad, I will become a hero," she promised herself. "And when I do, I'll earn enough money so that you never have to work again." While walking to the entrance, she saw a girl running straight past her. However, one of her shoelaces was open, causing her to trip. Before she could hit the ground, Ichako poked her elbow, activated a cord to make the girl float. "Easy there," Ichako cautioned the girl. "It would be bad if you injured yourself before the exam." Ichako deactivated her quirk, and the girl landed softly on her feet. The girl then turned to face her. From her perspective, the girl was rather pretty. She had long blonde hair and grass-green eyes. Her figure was rather thin, and she was roughly the same height as Ichako. "Thank you," the girl replied with a Russian accent. She then raised her eyes slightly. "And you are?" she asked politely. "I'm Ichako Araka," she replied cheerfully. "What's your name?" "Elena Belikov," she stated simply. "Are you here for the entrance exam?" Ichako nodded in response. "I see. What course are you applying for?" Elena asked. "Hero. You?" she replied. "General education," she admitted. "My quirk isn't exactly useful in the field of heroics." Her answer surprised Ichako because Gen Ed was usually where the applicants who didn't get the hero course ended up. It was rare for someone to apply for it directly. "What's your quirk?" Ichako asked curiously. "Empathetic vision. When I touch someone, I receive glimpses of their past related to what they are feeling. If someone feels a certain emotion very strongly, like despair or love, I can see all memories that are associated with that emotion. However, if the emotion is too powerful, it will overwhelm me, and I will lose consciousness," she explained. Araka was amazed. She had never heard of a quirk like that before. Though, she could see why it wouldn't work for the hero course. "My quirk will be useful in the field of psychology," she stated. "When I finish high school, I'm planning to move on to college and study to get a degree." She then turned and resumed walking. "Hey, wait," Araka called out while running after her. "You were wondering why I didn't ask about your quirk, right?" Elena mentioned. Ichako nodded in agreement. "Well, since you just used it on me, it's obvious that it's an anti-gravity quirk. Also, I don't mean to be rude, but we've got an exam to do, so can we maybe resume this conversation later?" Realizing she was right, Ichako started walking faster to the exam. Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki could hardly contain his excitement. The test laid out before him to get into UA was a combat course, his specialty. All he had to do was destroy whatever robots got in his way and earn as many points as possible. Easy, he thought. Like taking candy from a fucking baby. This was the ticket into UA, his first step to becoming a hero greater than All Might. "Say, that reminds me. Midoriya, you wanted to go to UA too, right?" The words he'd heard 10 months ago echoed in his head. A boy he bullied also came into his mind. The fuck, he thought, annoyed. Why the fuck am I thinking about that quirkless piece of shit now? In truth, he had avoided thinking about Deku ever since his disappearance. The day after the incident with the sludge villain, Deku had disappeared. At first, he thought Deku was being a coward and avoiding him. He was hoping that after their little talk, the nerd had finally given up on trying to become a hero. A quirkless freak like him had no right to be one in the first place, so it was just better for everyone. However, that was not the case. Later that day, the police came to the class and questioned everyone on Deku's disappearance. They asked questions about what he had been doing that day in his regular school life. Most denied any knowledge as they were not friends with Deku, which was completely true. When it was his turn, he told the police, "That quirkless moron isn't my problem. Don't say he's my friend because he isn't. He's just an obstacle in my way. Now if that's all, can I go back to class? I've got more important things I need to do." The police were shocked at Katsuki's attitude, but relented since they could not get any useful information out of him. "That fucking nerd isn't my problem. He can go and die for all I care," he thought aggressively. What happened to Deku was not, nor would it ever be, his problem. It wasn't as if he had done anything wrong. Nobody at school ever spoke against him for the way he treated Deku. Other students treated him the same way, and even the teachers were okay with it. In fact, a few days after his disappearance, everyone seemed to have completely forgotten about Deku, because his existence was never brought up again. "Applicants, please make your way to your selected field," announced President Mick. Katsuki snapped back to reality. "Shit," he growled. "Even when he's not around, he's still a pain in my ass. Well, fuck him. Just focus on the exam." Katsuki arrived at the entrance of his selected field. As soon as the doors opened, he started running. "Time to kick some ass," he said, grinning as sparks went off in his palms. All Might. All Might watched with the other teachers as the applicants made their way through the exam. Since he was not an official teacher at UA yet, he wasn't a judge. He was there for a more important reason: scouting out possible successors to his quirk, one for all. Since he was only able to take part in hero action for 3 hours a day, locating a suitable successor to being the next symbol of peace was crucial. Though there were other students to look at. "From the waypoints are gathering, it looks as though we'll have an interesting bunch this year," Principal Nezu stated. He was an animal, appearance mixed with a dog, bear, and mouse, with a quirk that made him highly intelligent. The teachers nodded in agreement. "With their quirks, it looks as though they'll become fine heroes," All Might said. "Can someone without a quirk become a hero?" "I don't think it's possible, kid." All Might gasped, but no one seemed to notice. They were all too preoccupied with the exam. "Why am I thinking about that now?" he wondered. Ever since his encounter with that boy, All Might had been recalling that memory every now and then. He was not proud of what he did. He had destroyed another person's dream after all. But at the same time, it needed to be done. Personally, All Might had nothing against quirkless people. However, he did believe that they were disadvantaged against those with quirks. He should know better than anyone. After all, he used to be quirkless. The reason he had said those things to that boy was that he believed he would be safer, that he would be less likely to die. It wasn't out of prejudice. Aside from that, even if he applied for a hero school, there was a high chance he would be rejected. There were very few hero schools that allowed quirkless people to apply, and even then, hardly anyone ever got in, so there was really no point. To his own knowledge, All Might had never even heard of a quirkless hero before. "Only 5 minutes left," Nezu announced. All Might snapped back to reality and looked at the exam. "Focus," he thought. "You'll be teaching these kids this year, so pay attention." Later that day at Nezu's office, All Might sat alone in front of the principal. "Quite a selective bunch we've got this year," Nezu said with enthusiasm. "Did anyone catch your eye, All Might? Any possible successors?" All Might shook his head and said, "It's too soon to be sure. But I can see there are a bunch of gifted youngsters, so maybe in due time." Nezu seemed happy at this statement. "Now on a side note, what were you gasping at during the exam?" Nezu asked. "It wasn't one of the children, that's for sure." All Might froze. He noticed All Might thought. He mentally berated himself. "If something is on your mind, you should tell someone. Don't hold it all in," Nezu told him with a concerned voice. All Might contemplated his answer for a moment. After a minute's silence, All Might took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Nezu was a friend, so there was no problem telling him. "About 10 months ago, there was an incident," he started explaining. And so, All Might told Nezu all about his encounter with the quirkless boy, and everything that had transpired between them. He even told him about how the boy saw him in his weakened state, though he didn't know about his powers. Nezu just listened silently, never making a move to interrupt him. When he finished speaking, Nezu said, "I see." All Might was surprised at his calm demeanor. "Don't you think it was wrong for me to say that, to ruin that boy's dream?" he asked, confused. Nezu gazed at him with an unreadable expression. "Why would I say that?" he asked. "You were just speaking your opinion, as well as from personal experience. I don't think I can begrudge you for that." All Might was relieved that Nezu was so understanding. However, he had another question. "Principal, what is your view on what the boy asked me?" All Might asked. Nezu got up from his seat and gazed out the window. "Honestly," he said, "I see no reason why it can't happen." All Might remained silent. "I can understand why you would think the way you do about them. When facing a villain or trying to save someone from an accident, quirkless people would be at a disadvantage. However, quirks are not everything. They don't define someone as a hero or a villain, their actions and capabilities do. Take Aizawa for example. His quirk may be useful for stopping other quirks, but that's all it's good for. Most of the time when fighting against villains, he would need to rely on hand-to-hand combat," Nezu explained. All Might stared at the floor. He had never thought of it that way before. "Now a quirkless person," he continued. "They could be a hero through excessive training in martial arts, and reliance on gadgets and weapons. With these, it would be quite possible for them to be on equal par with other heroes and villains." All Might considered it for a moment. When he says it like that, it does sound possible, he thought. "Here at UA, we believe that anyone can become a hero, even someone quirkless. It's why we allow them to apply," he continued. "Although I must admit we've never actually had a quirkless student before, in any department." All Might could tell from the way Nezu was speaking that he was disappointed at that last statement. "Anyway, enough of what I think," Nezu said, changing the subject. I'm afraid you will have to leave now, Toshinori. I have a lot of paperwork to attend to, and you must get some rest. You're going to be quite busy over the coming days with all the holographic recording you will be making. He was referring of course to the messages that would be sent to the students who successfully passed the entrance exam. All Might sighed, knowing that he was right. It was going to be a long couple of days. With that, he got up and proceeded to leave the room while waving goodbye to Nezu. As he walked towards the exit, All Might thought very hard about what Nezu had told him. He wanted to believe that it was possible, he really did. However, he still had his doubts. Whenever he tried being a hero while he was quirkless, it always ended up backfiring. It was only after he had received his quirk one for all that he was able to do something meaningful. As he came to the exit, he halted. With the thought of quirkless people being heroes, the image of that boy came into his head again. Wonder what he's doing now, he said softly. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.